Hello friends and welcome to Techi. In this video we are going to see the infrastructure requirement for the Edge Transport Server role. So Edge Transport Server role is different from the Exchange Mailbox Server role because you can install this role on Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows Server 2012 computer that are not the member of the internal Active Directory system. And this configuration make it easier and more secure to deploy Exchange Transport Server in a perimeter network. So before deploying the Edge Transport Server role on your organization, there are some consideration. So what are those consideration? The Edge Transport Server role cannot be deployed with any other Exchange server role. That means that, like, you cannot combine the Edge Transport Server role with any other Exchange Server 2016 server role. That means like you cannot install Edge Transport role and Mailbox role on a single server. And to provide the increased security, you must install the Edge Transport Server role on a separate computer, and you can use a virtual computer or any other physical computer for this. And also you should not install the Edge Transport Server role on a computer that is a member of internal Active Directory system, but you can install it on a perimeter network forest or a workgroup. The computer running the Edge Transport Server role must have the FQDN, because if it does not have a FQDN, it cannot communicate with the LDAP. Like your Active Directory has to communicate somehow with the Edge Transport Server role, and it uses the LDAP. So if you do not configure the FQDN with the Edge Transport Server role, it cannot communicate with your Active Directory. Though you do not have to install it on a domain joined computer, it should be on a perimeter network, but it should have a FQDN. In the next video we will see how we can do that. And also you should not allow Active Directory communication through the firewall that protects the internal network from the perimeter network. Because this can cause a security issue, such as allowing an unauthorized user to retrieve your email address directly from your Active Directory and then use them for spam. You should deploy the Edge Transport Server role on a perimeter network to ensure network isolation from both the internal network and the internal Exchange server. So this configuration provides a higher level of security for the rest of the Exchange server organization, which should be located behind the firewall on a separate internal network. And you must in the internal firewall you must allow SMTP traffic between the Edge Transport Server role and one or more internal Exchange Server 2016 server on port 25. The firewall must also allow outbound traffic towards the perimeter network for synchronization from ADDS to ADLDS on port 50636. And the firewall configuration required for Edge Transport Server is greatly simplified because the server does not need to be an internal domain member. And if the Edge Transport Server routes your email directly to the internet, you must configure the server with the IP address for DNS server that can be resolved DNS name on the internet. So what is Edge Sync? So Edge Sync is a process that replicates information from ADDS to ADLDS on Edge Transport servers. So because Edge Transport server are not joined to the internal Active Directory domain, so therefore they cannot directly access the Exchange server organization configuration or any recipient information which is stored in your Active Directory system. The Edge Sync feature enable the shared information to replicate from Active Directory to ADLDS. So you can deploy Edge Transport Server role without using Edge Sync, but using Edge Sync can decrease the effort needed by the administrator to manage the Edge Transport Server. So ADDS contain much of the configuration information required by Edge Transport Server. For example, like if you configure accepted domains in your Exchange Admin Center or by Exchange Management Shell, these accepted domain can replicate automatically to the edge transport servers to enable any filtering or transport rule that are based on recipients. You must implement edge sync to replicate the recipient information to ADLDS. So when you deploy edge transport server, it is recommended that you also have to deploy the edge sync. It is not necessary, but it is recommended from the Microsoft side. So in our next video we will see how we can deploy our edge transport server, and we will do a practical with how to deploy the edge transport server role.